Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on? I'm going back.
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, show number 80, I think. May the 3rd, 2022. I didn't update my show number on here. I'm pretty sure it's 80, which is a good. We've made it 80 episodes.
Our show is an octogenarian. We made it.
Yeah,
Made
it is.
We made it to 80.
We're approaching that 100 show mark here before you know it. So, Jay, what's going on, man?
Not a lot, man. Just as seems to be the theme, a beautiful day out here at the park, and just looking forward to talking some sports. We got some good stuff, some good news. We got some not so good news. We've got everything on both sides of this, man. So if you're ready,
It's a mixed bag, man.
Let's hop into it, man.
Yeah, let's get into it. We'll start off, we'll get a little cup of coffee action here. Previous show we discussed the media getting into the Moody Center and getting some photos and the Moet Lounge and all the action that was happening there. But now we've actually had some events take place in there. We had the 2-night Willie Nelson George Strait extravaganza that went down this past weekend. And yesterday, the athletic department at UT released pictures of what the court for the basketball team is going to look like, the much anticipated basketball court design. Let's open up with that. What did you make of that? I know we were, we were kind of having a discussion about it through text about the unveiling of the court. What did you make of it?
Yeah, we got that sneak peek from our source about 6 hours before anybody else did. We saw that first strip of the court that was laid down, which was pretty cool. And at that moment, I kind of made the assumption that it was going to be about as simple as it turned out to be. It's a very basic design. I think if you're going for like a non-gimmicky look, which it seems like they were just, let's just stick to the basics. Even though they said they pulled from like 4 different ideas of people along with the coaches' input, it seems like if it took you 6 people's input to come up with that idea, you probably, I don't know what that was all about. But it's just a simple, basic. At least the orange is all the same color all the way around. I think that's the positive here, man. But I think we sort of had some thoughts that maybe we would get the skyline at the bottom of the court, or some, the sort of the cartoon-ish Bevo maybe somewhere, or whatever. But it's a very basic but stoic, I guess, design, if you will. And it is what it is. I think it looks nice. It's sharp. I mean, what was your take on it?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was the color, the orange matching across the board. I think we remarked on it, and plenty of people have remarked on it for a few years now, about how the court at the Irwin Center had about 4 different shades of burnt orange on it, which never made much sense. And whenever CDC was approached about it on social media, as he likes to answer questions on Twitter and all those things, when people say, why don't you just update the colors on the court? And his go-to answer was always like, well, we're going to do that with the new arena, as if it was some kind of, big issue to paint the current court. But it, I guess it's not surprised. There was maybe a little bit of a letdown seeing it. You think that there was going to be, especially like you see in the NBA and throughout college basketball now, like some really wild and interesting court designs, like maybe something like that would be the case. But, first year in the new building, trying to set up some new tradition, trying to establish, I think going with a, tried and true type basketball court design is probably, I'd be curious. I wish, did they release the finalists, the guy, like the ones that they said they pulled some inspiration from? I'd be fascinated to see the ones that they did, just to kind of tie it all together, to make it, make it a little more sense about their design idea. But
yeah, I would be interested to see those. I didn't see those get released, but I don't know that we will. But yeah, man, it's just sort of very simple, to the point, which I guess if you're Texas and you haven't really done anything, really ever in your basketball program, how many Final Fours have you gone to? But one, it's like not even, you don't have any history. So are you going to be a gimmick? is your court going to be a gimmick, or
Right.
is your court going to be like, okay, we're here to play basketball? And I think that's the
Right.
direction that they chose. So, I mean, again, there's this basketball program has a long way to go. Chris Beard going into year 2 in a new arena, and working the portal that he'll do, and got some guys that have already decided to come back. Timmy Allen's coming back. There's whispers that maybe Timmy Allen's brother, who basically almost dropped a 40 spot in a tournament game. If it wasn't 40, it was close. There's whispers that he might be interested in transferring to
Bring
Texas,
him in.
which would be like his 4th team in 5 years, I think, something crazy like that. But whatever works.
That's he's just ahead of the curve. That's going to be the norm.
That's neither
soon,
here
so.
nor there, But yeah, man, just a plain Jane court, but it still looks sharp. I mean, I almost think if it was too gimmicky, I would complain about
We'd bash it too.
But but for the most part,
we're Texas fans. That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, it'll do.
Well, let's go across the parking lot from the Moody Center over to the football stadium and the offices within there for the coaching staff. Big miss this past weekend on the recruiting front, on the transfer portal front for Steve Sarkisian and the football program. O'Shawn Mathis decided to pick Nebraska over what seemed like was going to be just an absolute layup for this football program. A transfer from TCU, fit what this team needed, edge rusher. He has history with Gary Patterson. I mean, he's from the Austin area. Just all the different factors that played into all this. All signs pointed towards Texas being the pick, but he went with Nebraska. It's a pretty big loss, a pretty big miss for Texas, Jay. I mean, I think this is going to tie in with something we were going to discuss a little bit after this and on today's show about the whole name, image, and likeness. We talk the Wild West aspect of everything that's going on right now. Like, what do you make of the Mathis miss, and how does that relate kind of into this name, image, likeness stuff, everything going on for you?
By all accounts, Texas was just beaten here. Like whether it was a recruiting pitch, whether it was an NIL pitch, it just sounds like Texas was just flat out beaten. And like you mentioned, there were a lot of variables there that we thought lined up well for Texas in terms of the Patterson connection, the like you were saying, it's sort of like that. A lot of these guys, they carry these chips on their shoulders because they weren't recruited by Texas, so they get picked up by a TCU or something like that. And Gary Patterson, for 2 decades, did a really nice job of picking up guys off the quote unquote scrap heap and turning athletes into football players. And I think O'Shawn Mathis is a really good example of that. And to be able to, feel at that moment like, hey, like this should have been a Texas get. And for that to not be the case, for that to just absolutely flip. And, the announcement, had the hat game, playing the shell game or whatever. And then the thing drops and it's just a big red N for Nebraska. And I couldn't believe it. Honestly, I was pretty shocked, man, that this didn't go Texas's way, because like I said, from all accounts, it just sounds like they got flat out beaten, out recruited, out everything for Mathis. So what was your take on this?
Well, I think you just hit on something that's really, I don't know if he's got something that didn't get enough play in discussion about this recruitment, in that being an Austin area guy, wasn't recruited by Texas before going to TCU. As far as I know, wasn't recruited heavily enough, ended up going to TCU, like you mentioned, which that was Patterson's specialty, is getting guys like him. When he entered the transfer portal, I remember local radio here, Bucky Godbolt, mentioned something along the lines of, you never really know with guys like this because you didn't really recruit them the first time. And how much of a grudge or, a negative, players use that as fuel when they're on the other side. When he's playing for TCU against Texas, how much of that, his performance and his motivation was to go out, go stick it to Texas, like a lot of these guys do. And I really wonder how much of that came into play with the re-recruitment of them. I wonder how much of it was an aspect of like, oh, now they want me. And, like they didn't want me before, but now they do. And, and just maybe some lingering, negative feelings about that kind of the Nebraska pitch and everything that they did, maybe, kind of was like, okay, well, here's a place that, I don't have that kind of like, bad taste in my mouth from a few years ago whenever so I don't know. I think that's a really interesting thing though and I think it could be something to look at, if you're a coach now recruiting high schoolers, that how much do you have to recruit and with the possibility of maybe recruiting them again in a few years, even if, they're maybe not a take at this point, like, I just don't know if we have the room right now, if they're the take, that in a couple of years when they are a take at that point, and you go, hey, why don't you transfer into Texas if you're going into the portal? They go, no, you didn't want me the first time around. Like, how much of that is going to come into play? I think it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And again, if Texas is getting outspent, it's a problem. If Texas is getting out recruited, it's a problem. So either way, missing O'Shawn Mathis is an issue for this program.
Yeah,
Texas has about 4 months to find a pass rush, because there ain't much of one on campus right now. That is just not. Like, we can cherry pick stats or specific games for the players that are still here on campus, but there ain't a lot of pass rush on this campus right now, and Texas has about 4 months to figure that out. So O'Shawn Mathis was going to be that guy that was at least going to help bring the defense bring that pass rush from non-existent to at least noticeable, and then they missed on that. So where they go from here, this is why Steve Sarkisian makes the money that he makes, and why this coaching staff, who, by the way, 7 coaches got extensions and 5 got raises coming off a 5-7 season. I didn't put the math together, but like you said 5 raises and 7 extensions after 5 and 7.
That's 5 and 7.
And that
imagine what happens when they go 7 and 5.
Yeah, man. Qualify for a
blow the roof
game.
off. Yeah.
I mean, they're locked down until 2035. This is just a thing where it's like, we can't wait to get to the games and see this on the field product, because of what we have right now and what was left in our mouths, the taste that was left in our mouths from this 5-17. I'm not into the Kool-Aid at this point. I'm not buying into this team. I'm not buying into Steve Sarkisian as a big time college football coach. And I mean, you haven't shown me that's who you are. You've shown me all I know is 5-7. I know it wasn't with a lot of guys that weren't yours, but it's really hard for me to just jump on board with this thing, especially when you're missing guys like Mathis that you should have got.
Yeah, I know this isn't this isn't probably a hot enough take for either way, but like, I'm with you in that I'm not necessarily sold, but I haven't necessarily lost, I don't want to say lost faith, but like, there's an optimism, there's a tempered optimism, I guess you could say, or kind of a tempered pessimism. I feel like I'm right in the middle of it honestly, because like,
I get it.
The recruiting, we talk about the skill players that he's brought in. You got Quinn Ewers now, like all these things where there's been some positive momentum, but then there's these other things where there's little warning signs, and it's, I'll bridge this kind of into the NIL discussion in that, I don't, these kind of excuses that we're hearing from Belmont and the people in the orbit around Belmont, the boosters and those that are doing the whole NIL thing. We hear this like, oh, it's all going to be coming, and just wait, like it's all going to work out. Nobody else is waiting.
No.
Nobody else is waiting. Like, that's where Texas is being a little bit too reactive instead of proactive in this whole situation, which in the long term, okay, maybe we'll see how that plays out. But it's wide open right now. And if Texas isn't out utilizing its supposed resources, I mean, you've got Oregon coming in trying to poach Xavier Worthy. Like, Texas is being caught flat-footed here. Mm-hmm. And those are some of those kinds of things. I know, maybe athletic department, whatever kind of piece you want to stick that to. There's just something, and I feel like that kind of is going to bleed over into this football team once we do get to the games. There's these kind of warning signs that, I mean, would I be surprised with an 8 or 9 win season? No, not at all, because I feel like that's kind of the expectation, right? at least for this coming year with the talent they brought in. Would I be surprised at a 5-7 year? No.
No.
No. And that's where, I don't know. I haven't jumped off the, I haven't gone fully into the like Sark's not the guy mode yet. But I also haven't jumped into the it's turning. This is going to be a 9-win season. Next year is when there's going to be a big push, nationally. Like, I'm not there. I don't know. Maybe it's just we've seen this movie before in a way, but there's just these little warning signs I feel like that are bothersome.
Yeah, and like the warning signs with Tom Herman were a little bit more pronounced and out there, like the headbutting and the double birds to the Longhorn Network cameras and those things those red flags, Charlie Strong, just absolute lack of anything on a game day showing that you
coin
belong.
tosses.
Like
not knowing his quarterback's name in court, the booster's wife thing behind the scenes. Like there were those.
Right. Little things like that, and when we're starting to see the cracks in Steve Sarkisian, and there's still time to turn the corner here. We're going into year 2 here, man. Like, is it disappointing to go 5-7 in any season if you're the University of Texas, no matter what the circumstances? Yeah, it's disappointing and it shouldn't happen, period. But it did. And this guy's getting paid a lot of money to recruit and coach his way out of this hole. And he could still be the dude, like you said. It's just, it almost feels like Texas having 10, 11, 12 win seasons or whatever will be the anomaly, as opposed to, it happened again. And then I almost feel like, and I don't like saying stuff like this, but it feels like Texas is so far behind right now where everybody else is, not just in NIL stuff, but just in terms of having a football program and a culture, that I'm worried that Texas is just an 8-win program year in and year out. And that the years of,
that'd be nice.
It's going to take 8 wins, right? We're sitting here like Mike yesterday, Dr. Roto contributor and Longhorn insider Mike Collin was saying yesterday the other day, remember when 10 wins wasn't enough? Remember those days of Mac when 10 wins was just like, Mac got to 10 wins, but when's he going to win the big one? And now you look back on that and it's like, damn, man, like that. I
remember that distinctly. That was, what was it, after that 2003 season where Vince was a freshman? That was the team where he got benched in that Holiday Bowl against Washington State, I think it was. And everybody was like, I think the team finished 10-3 or something on that season, or 9-3, whatever it was. I think it was 10-3 because it was in that run of all those 10-win seasons. And it was that like, this just isn't going to work. Mac is just not going to get this team over the hump. It's time to go. Look at how bad he's mismanaged Vince Young in his freshman year and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, at the time, there was kind of a feeling of like, if Texas moved on from Mac after 03, kind of be like, maybe that is true. Obviously, we saw what happened after that with Vince Young and everything. But, and this is, a discussion we've had before, and we can save it for a deeper conversation, different date. But you mentioned like the anomaly of a 10-win season minus that Mac run. That is the anomaly at Texas. Mm-hmm. We talk about historic results. So that, that time with Mac was the anomaly. Getting a rare 10-win season here and there is not really all that out of the norm for Texas historically. So.
Right. You get Darryl Royal that comes in, and you get Mac Brown. You get 2 coaches that transcended things that were going on at the time. And you get a situation to where everybody else around, it's not like this historic where you look at it and it's like, oh, Texas has been, they've been competing forever. And I know programs, it's all cyclical, right? A lot of the times, but then we've seen these dynasties that have been put together in college football lately where, it's not like you would envision Alabama falling off. It's not like you would envision Georgia falling off at this point because they're so established.
Exactly.
And they're both so ahead of the game. And in terms of recruiting, in terms of culture, in terms of NIL deals, like it's a whole
infrastructure
package.
And resources.
Everything that they have in place right now is so far ahead of where Texas is. it just makes me feel like that Texas, like you were saying, it outside of the Mac stuff and the Darryl Roll stuff, there's not a lot of other history to lean on. There's a lot of lean years in this program's history, and it just feels like we're back to seeing that, okay, maybe this is where Texas is. Texas fans don't want to hear that. Texas fans don't want to hear like, well, this is just a mediocre program that every once in a while jumps up. But honestly, if you look back at the history, it is what it is. Like, I know you look at blue bloods, you look at the number of wins all time, you look at that's all great. But when you've been playing football for as long as this program has been playing,
Right,
you're bound to put up some numbers there in terms of all-time wins and things like that. Outside, if Texas wasn't a blue blood, quote unquote, like if Texas wasn't viewed at that as or like that, people already view Texas as somewhat of a joke around the country because of the way that this program has been run for the last decade plus. If Texas didn't have those two just, blips in the radar where they go up and then come back down, this football program would not even be remotely regarded as anything serious. And the fact that there's as much money around this program, the fact that there's as much hype around this program year in and year out, it's amazing to me, because what has Texas football done to show us outside of those two bursts? And like you said, the Mac Brown years, we look back at that and it's just like, man, 10 wins a season. Imagine that again. What a great problem to have. But
yeah,
at Texas, we compete for national championships at Texas. Do you? And that's hard to say. I don't like saying stuff like that, but really though, like, is that what Texas football does? I mean, you got a transcendent talent in Vince Young that gets the one since the late 60s. And you get Vince Young that comes in here, and a coach that just let him be himself and finally and listen to the 50 Cent on my iPod, gonna do it, gonna buy in.
that did it.
And he did it. And credit to Mac. Oh, Sally made the cookies. They were great. Like he did it. He made it happen. He got the ring. But so did Philip Fulmer. And you don't hear like Tennessee, like being held in the same regard as Texas, in terms of recent championships and stuff like that. It's amazing to me, this conversation that we continue to have, because honestly, at this point, I just don't feel like Texas deserves to be in that blue blood, not blue blood, but that upper level conversation. And I don't understand why people continuously convince themselves that Texas deserves to be in that conversation, because they don't. And you keep looking for that coach, Kerry, and until they find that guy, and Steve Sarkisian can still be that guy, because he can still be that guy, but it's just like the cracks are starting to show, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yep, it'll be interesting. It's going to be we'll see how this continues to play out, as transfer season still hadn't stopped. So we'll see what happens.
Transfer season never stops, Kerry.
It will never stop now with everything, with the NIL stuff, everything. It is nonstop now. So,
yep.
Well, we got about 5 or 6 minutes here. Let's hit on Austin FC real quick.
Yeah.
We're just going to skip over Slughorns right now because they're not even ranked. They got beat to hell by Oklahoma State this past weekend, and whatever the hell is happening over at the Dish, it sounds like this is going to be a lost season. We'll save that for another time as we get a little bit deeper and towards the end of baseball season, see if this team can make the postseason. But as of now, it doesn't look like it. But let's get into Austin FC real quick. The second place Austin FC, and second in the league, second overall in the West, sitting on 20 points, rapidly approaching last season's total after 9 games it's at now. And so the Vancouver win was, we discussed that. That was a game that Austin should have been able to handle easily. They did. 3-0 win at home against Vancouver, who are dismal. They're not good. But that's what you do against bad teams. And that was something that last year Austin FC didn't do against bad teams. Went on the road against Houston this past weekend, first in-state derby of the season, and ugly beginning. Goal from midfield, which Brad Stuver gets injured on, trying to dive after it. And he leaves, but they settle in. Danny Pereira gets his first professional goal with Austin FC, and then Driussi with just a screamer in the second half to to get the comeback win on the road. And that's another thing this club hadn't done going back to last season, was getting these wins on the road. You're starting to see them starting to produce some results there. And sitting in second place is pretty damn good after 9 games. And they're only 1 point back of LAFC, 1 or 2 points. Zeke's barking back there and agreeing. But so then this is going to be a really interesting month ahead for Austin FC. LA Galaxy come to town this coming weekend. They're 3rd in the West. And that's going to be another test. Is it, Q2 is going to be rocking? Is that going to be, this is one of those ones where you go, a point is great here. I mean, again, you're defending your home turf, but a point also works for the Galaxy as well. They're thinking, with the way that Q2 has been for Austin FC, that LA Galaxy are thinking, just go in there and get a point. Like it's turned into that kind of environment. So I think a point works for everybody involved. You get a win there against the Galaxy, though, it just ups that heat a little bit more as this really difficult schedule in May starts to stack up. Road trip to Salt Lake coming up. That's a tough environment, tough place to go play. And then I think after that, trip to LAFC, who's sitting on top of the league. And that could be, we're talking about starting getting deep into the season, a battle for first place in the league in Los Angeles. So
showcase game.
It's a showcase, but they're doing, I feel like they're kind of exceeding expectations a little bit. What do you think now that we're 9 games in? How do you feel about, they've got 20 out of 27 possible points.
It's pretty impressive.
And undefeated at home. The cup loss was bad, but how are you feeling about this team after nine weeks into the season?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we recognize Tarbell, who came in off the bench for Stuver, the guy that was originally signed to be the keeper for Austin FC,
right?
At least paid like it, and then Stuver just flat out beat him for that job. And he didn't, by all accounts, he didn't pout, he didn't fuss, he did, been a good team guy. After the game, after the match, he was like, hey, this is about the team. We got to hope Stuver's feeling good. Let's keep it going. Let's get out and get the next one, and they're saying all the right things right now in this locker room, and they're doing all the right things on the pitch. It's like you see it. Okay, last season, you get down 1-0 early on the road, and that's it. It's, you're not gonna, because they couldn't manufacture goals. Their scoring chances were so few and far between. And now you look at it and it's like, well, they don't feel like they're ever out of a match, ever. They don't ever feel like they're out of it. And I feel like you can see that confidence going. Pereira getting his first, friend of the show, Danny Pereira, getting his first MLS goal. Driussi
leads the league in scoring,
world class. They're
head
Austin,
of the pack in the MVP race right now.
Lucky to have that guy in Austin.
Enjoy him while he's here.
Right. Well, again, lucky to have him. And one thing that you notice immediately is the depth on this roster.
So much better than last season's.
When Josh Wolf starts to make these substitutions, you're no longer holding your breath because of what's coming in off the pine. You're looking at that and you're like, okay, so Gallagher has been getting a couple of starts, which is great. That's my dude. I love seeing that guy get 65, 70, 80, sometimes 90 minutes a run. I love that. And the energy that he brings and the speed and everything. But then if you bring it in, if Nick Lima's not getting a start, you're bringing him off the bench and bringing his strength and, energy and it's like you're not afraid to bring guys in off the bench anymore because you know that the quality is not going to drop off. And in fact, depending on who's coming in, you're bringing in, I think Wolf has done a really nice job of matching speed substitutions with positional sort of, with what's the word that I'm looking for here? The sort of the shape that he wants that team to keep.
Right.
And he's done a really nice job of formation. He's done a really nice job of maybe the one match where it cost him the 3 points and ended up getting the draw. What was that?
San Jose.
The season, the San Jose match.
San Jose up 2, and then he kind of those were substitutions of taking the foot off the gas a bit.
Yeah, and we haven't seen.
But he's learned
since.
From that, and
he's definitely learned from that, man. And I think that as a head coach, as a manager of a football club, if you're learning from those errors and you're not allowing yourself to outcoach, you're not outcoaching yourself from winning a game. You know, you're not getting in your own way. When you have the talent that Austin FC has, uh, get out of the way, right? Get out of the way. Let the players do their thing. Get out of the way. Just don't be the reason that your team loses points. And ever since that first mistake that we called him out for, it seems like he's learned from that. And I think the substitutions have been great. The energy's there. You know, they've got Tick now in the locker room, the mascot, the bear, the teddy bear, Tick the bear, Tick. What's his official?
Tick Martins.
Tick Martins. You know, which is
I'm curious what the relation is to Felipe Martins. I'm curious what the situation is there. I'm still trying to effort some inside info, but
well, and again, you know, in response to the pollo, who, you know, is taking all this stuff is taking on a life of its own. And that's what you love about this club, is that they're not even 2 years in. You're setting up traditions. You know, your fan base is rabid. You're taking advantage of that. You know, like you said, Q2, they like to say, you know, Q2 is a fortress and nobody wants to really play there as an opposing player, because you just know the type of environment you get. You know, Austin FC is going to play well at home. And that's the sign of a good club, is you putting all those things together, and that's how you build a culture in a short amount of time.
yeah.
And Josh Wolf, Claudio Reyna, this entire staff, front office, whatever you want to call it, with Austin FC, is doing the job it takes right now to be successful in this league. Like we said, do I expect Austin FC to finish second in the West? I don't. I think that there's going to be a lull here. I think there's a tough.
This is a really tough stretch coming up. Yeah.
I mean, but the point is 9 games in, people taking this club seriously, not just because they have to. They have to take this club seriously now. And it's not just a 1 or 2 game. Oh, you win, you know, you beat Miami and you beat, you know, you start off the season with 10 goals, but they were shit clubs. And it's like, well, this team.
Yeah, but those teams have gone and found themselves some good wins too.
And that's where, on the road too, those teams are playing well on the road. They're finding ways to win. And Austin FC was not going to be the club to give away those points to those teams that are inferior clubs, but they're not giving away those points. And it's just like, that's how you establish a culture, man. That's how you establish, like McConaughey talks about, this is the 100-year war, man. And we're in year 2 of the 100-year war. And it's just feels like it's heading down the right path.
Well, and I do want to give a shout to, you know, you mentioned the way that they've kind of constructed the roster here in year 2. I think you can see it. It's one of those kind of, it's not necessarily showing on the score sheet. Well, it does in Urruti's case, but how the leadership between that Urruti and Felipe Martins, and even you can put Ethan Finley in there, the guys that came in this offseason that are experienced, they know this league, but they've got, you can tell the chemistry that those guys have all built in this short time. And that's where, you know, things like Tick Martins and like all these things, like you can tell it just didn't have that feel last season in a way that these guys were all jiving on the same page where they are now. And that's where you're seeing it in the results, because your leader and goalie and your best player last season, and a guy that, you know, people lean on for leadership, goes out in the first 5 minutes with what looked like, you know, he went straight to the hospital, what looked like a pretty bad injury at first. And they went down 1-0 early. They didn't, you know, last year that would have been it. And it would have been a sloppy, they probably would have been ran off the pitch. But you see the faith in the system, the faith in each other. They know where they're going to be. You can see that chemistry developing. And, you know, and guys like Driussi, you know, there's sometimes you get in big money guys that just don't play into that. You know, they're there on a big contract. They're going to do what they do, and they kind of play independent of the system. And sometimes that pays off and sometimes it doesn't, but that's not the case with Driussi. He's fully bought in with the way that they play and with this group. And yeah, I mean, in terms of what's coming up this next month, it is, you know, it's going to be a really difficult run. And I think if this team is, you know, still sitting I would expect them to be at this point, still within a playoff spot at the end of May, going
Sure.
into June, then I think this team's in a really good place to finish going to the playoffs this year. And that was the goal coming in. And, are there going to be some bumps in the road over the next few weeks? Perhaps. But
Sure.
if not, if they, if they are navigating this and they're still coming out near the top of the West at the end of this month, then I think there's still a transfer window coming up too this summer to bolster the squad. And they're doing all this without a designated player, with Cecilio Dominguez still, on the shelf with the league. So all those things considered, this is pretty damn impressive what they're doing. And, we'll see how they carry it through, but yeah, so it's going to be interesting. This is going to be all this talk about bonus games and all this stuff from the national media regarding Austin FC is about to be put to rest, because these are not bonus games coming up. And so we'll see what they do. And so it's time to earn some respect.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Well, man, that's I think that's going to be about it for us time-wise today.
Let's put a bow on it. Yep.
Yeah, let's wrap this thing up. What do we got? We're going to be out next week, but we'll get this going back here again soon. And we should have plenty more to talk about, more NIL and transfer Wild West madness. We'll see where this baseball team over at UT where they can get over the next, couple weeks, and try to salvage something out of this season. But
hopefully we have some positives to talk about the slugging Horns, because they're still slugging, but they ain't pitching.
They're still hitting. Yeah, exactly.
They're still slugging, but they ain't pitching, and it's time to turn this around. Still, I think they'll still make the postseason, but man, it's gonna be rocky.
They got to start stacking some wins where they can, because
they're sitting ninth in the Big 12 right now.
I think so. I need to double check.
Eighth. They're in the bottom half of the conference. It doesn't matter. They're not sitting very well right now. Got a chance to try to dig a little bit out of that this weekend, but we'll see, man. Hey, everybody, appreciate y'all listening. We'll catch you next time. Hook 'em, baby.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see ya.
ATX representing Fatal, baby.
Falling on 6th on a Saturday.